Hey, how's it going guys, Lord Helix here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the Huntsman, dubbed Luxman by most and for a good reason. Added back in May of 2009 as a part of the Sniper vs Spy update, the Huntsman is one of the more interesting weapons in TF2, and definitely the most interesting sniper primary when it comes to mechanics and playstyle. The Huntsman pretty much makes Sniper a whole new class. No longer being limited as a long to mid-range support class, he becomes a close to mid-range offensive class. The weapon's completely different to all the other Sniper primaries. It's like if the Siggy Bomb launcher wasn't a secondary for the demo, but instead was another primary. While both weapons achieve the same end result, they do them in completely different ways and allow the player to achieve them in different ways. Let's talk about how it differs to a normal rifle stat-wise. The Huntsman has a decreased long-range damage as well as a lowered ammo count by half, meaning you have 12 shots instead of 24. However, the Huntsman requires much less time to fully charge and achieve maximum damage as well as a faster movement speed while charging, 45% compared to the rifle's 27%. The longer you charge it also dictates the distance the arrow can travel. Without charging, the arrow will travel 36 meters per second. Holding it for 1 second increases it by 25%, and this number continues to increase until it reaches 5 seconds. Be careful, however, as once you hold the charge for longer than 5 seconds, the arrow becomes extremely inaccurate. If you ever need to, you can stop charging by right-clicking, which lowers your arrow. It can shoot underwater, and the arrow tip can be ignited by a friendly Pyro, the Thompson, and the Bison. So this is a bit of a after recording meme. When I went to test the Bison and the Thompson, it turns out they don't work anymore. They don't light it on fire anymore. This is because of the recent change to the Bison and the Thompson that changed their projectile type. I asked Sigsev, who is a bug fixer for TF2, he's done a lot of stuff on the for the game, and he reckons that they weren't even really meant to light the Huntsman on fire to begin with, and now that they've been changed, they don't anymore, and he thinks that they probably won't change it back. So yeah, that's not a thing anymore. Anyway. Or if you're on Dagwood Keep, there's a couple of torches scattered around that also ignite the arrow. If you hit an enemy with a flaming arrow, the enemy will be put on fire, which is a pretty neat feature for the weapon. Now that we have all that covered, we can talk about the interesting part of this weapon, and that's the fact that it's projectile based instead of the rest of the rifles, which are all hit scan. Because it fires projectiles, quite a few more variables have to be taken into account that you don't need to think about when you're using hit scan weapons. One being that the arrows don't move instantly but have a preset travel speed, meaning that you have to adjust your aim to suit the distance your opponent is at. It's also affected by gravity, which has to be taken into account when you're trying to shoot someone at a distance. Because of its travel speed and the fact that you can no longer scope, snipers that are using a normal rifle have quite the advantage over you, as they don't have to take into the factors of gravity and travel speed, and they can just shoot at your head when they see it and kill you. That and because your arrows do travel at a set speed, they can be pretty easily avoided, making sniper 1v1s very difficult for you unless they are also using the Huntsman. Obviously, you do have the upper hand when it comes to close range, however the chances of you getting close enough to the enemy sniper to initiate a close range battle are pretty slim. Earlier in the video, I said the Huntsman is called a Luxman by a majority of people. In case you've never used the weapon and don't know why that is, let me tell you. The Huntsman can headshot a whole lot easier than a hit scan weapon, and this has to do with how the game calculates headshots when it comes to the projectile. Before we continue, I have to briefly go over the two kind of hitboxes in the game. If you'd like a more detailed explanation, you can check out my video on this subject, but basically the game has two sets of hitboxes, one used for calculating hit scan weapons and another for projectiles. Calculating hit scan headshots are rather simple. If your shot collides with the head hitbox, then it's counted as a headshot, dealing critical damage to the enemy. However, when it comes to calculating headshots for projectiles, it gets more complex. Because the projectile hitbox is one giant solid box instead of multiple model conforming boxes, there is no set place for the projectile to collide to calculate if a headshot happened or not. To get around this, the developers instead had to manipulate the projectile hitbox and replicate the same effect. A headshot is dictated if the projectile collides with a certain space in the hitbox. It's this mechanic that causes the Huntsman to headshot so easily. I mapped out the area that the Huntsman can headshot, and as you can see, it's quite a bit larger than the hit scan based hitbox. That gives the Huntsman a lot of leeway when it comes to headshotting. That and the arrow is a lot larger than the single point of a hit scan, giving it even more space to collide with the headshot area. Even if it appears that the arrow has missed, as long as just the corner of the arrow's hitbox collides with the headshot area, it's a headshot. Now I can hear you asking, what's the point of a projectile hitbox anyway? Why not just use the other hitboxes? Wouldn't that make things simpler? And while I don't have the real reason for why they did this, after all I'm not Valve, and as far as I could see they didn't release any information on the exact reason, I do have an idea that at least makes a bit of sense. The bullets from hit scan weapons can only hit one single box out of the many that make up the hit scan hitboxes. Each box is separate from the other, and the total damage you take is an add up of all the boxes that were hit at that time. This method of damage calculation doesn't lend itself well when it comes to the explosion-based projectiles, as in ones that generate a blast radius, which were the only projectiles that existed when TF2 was created, excluding the syringe gun. The game would have issues calculating the correct damage taken from an explosion, as when each single box of the hit scan hitboxes collides with the blast radius, it calculates the damage as if it was the only box that was in the blast radius, meaning you would take an unnecessary amount of damage. I'm assuming that Valve couldn't find a way to properly distribute the damage among the hitboxes in the blast radius, and thus they decided to go with a simpler route and just make a new singular hitbox to suit the purpose of projectile calculation. They didn't think they would need to add a weapon that's projectile based and has headshotting capability, so they didn't create a hitbox that could be manipulated easily to suit that weapon's mechanic. Again, this is speculation on the reasoning. I could be correct or completely off. Point is, the Huntsman hit registration is really stupid. Sadly, I don't think there's a simple way they could fix this issue, so we'll just have to deal with it. So let's say you want to play Huntsman. Maybe you just don't have the greatest aim as sniper but still want to play the class, or maybe you just enjoy being more aggressive than supportive. Whatever your reasoning there begs the question, what secondaries and melee should I use with the weapon? Well, luckily for you, the Huntsman works rather well with every secondary in melee, excluding the Shahanshah. But I mean, come on, that weapon doesn't really combo well with anything. Looking at our secondaries first, both the two kinds of SMGs work great with the Huntsman, as they are both mid to close range weapons just like the Huntsman. All you have to do is hit your opponent with an arrow, then finish them off with your SMG of choice. While the stock works great for this, the cleaners would probably be the better choice, as you can build your Crikey meter up pretty quickly when using the Huntsman, and mixing mini crits with the Huntsman's already rather impressive damage is just asking for trouble. What about the Girardi? Well, the Girardi works in a similar way to the cleaners, allowing you to get pretty easy mini crits without having to build up damage first. Obviously, you do lose an arguably easy to aim weapon and have to rely solely on the Huntsman for damage beyond melee range, but if you're skilled enough with the weapon, that isn't too much of an issue. How about the backpack secondaries? The Darwin's Danger Shield and the Cozy Camper work great. The Razorback is okay, but not super useful, seeing as it'll be much more aware and sentient playing at close range, not being distracted by the tunnel visioning effect of a scope, so spies will have a harder time sneaking up on you. The DDS is great because of that extra health, allowing you to play more aggressively, as well as giving you a bit more of a fighting chance against snipers that are using a normal rifle. And the Cozy is useful for the health regen aspect, allowing you to be more mobile and not as reliant on health packs, medics, or other sources of health. On to melee weapons, the Bushwhacker works great with both the Girardi and the Cleaners because of its critical hit damage it can cause, and the Shiv works great with the Girardi, not as much as with the Cleaners, but still pretty good. It would also be the better choice with the stock SMG and the backpack-based secondaries because they don't grant mini crits that the Bushwhacker can work with. Or you could just go stock, which also works rather well. So overall, you're pretty lucky when it comes to weapon combinations. This really does add to the whole new class ideal. The Huntsman works so differently to the normal rifle and really combos differently with the secondaries the sniper has, allowing you to really experiment with how you want to play the class. Anyway, that's the end of this video, guys. I hope it was informative and I hope it allowed you to get more of an insight on the Huntsman. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like, that'd be really awesome, and if you haven't, consider subscribing, I would really appreciate that. Anyway, I hope you all have a good day, and I will see you on the next video.